Now, this morning, I want to talk to us about relentless faith. That's the sermon title. The title of the sermon this morning is Relentless Faith. Now, physically and materially, we feel like we are average, right? And sometimes we feel we are above average. Sometimes we feel we are below average. Now, spiritually, there is a question, what are you feeling? But this morning, I want to teach the church about relentless faith, and the word relentless means unstoppable. Relentless faith comes when your spiritual maturity increases. We're going to see relentless faith is like climbing this ladder. I want you to imagine getting to relentless faith is a step-by-step process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey that you live, and it's an everyday journey with God. And step number one is receive Jesus as the developer of your faith. That's number one. Anything that distracts you from Jesus, take it out of your life, because if you're going to keep that, you cannot receive Jesus to develop your faith in your life. Jesus have to be your grounding. Jesus have to be your root. In other words, it's not Jesus and other options. It's Jesus and Jesus alone. Faith that we have in our life starts with Jesus, and He is also the finisher who brings it to full maturity. If you think that your faith is not perfect, it's because you're not comparing, or your faith is not grounded in Jesus. Step number two, be rooted in God's word. You need to train your mind to say, if God's word says this, I'm just going to do that. Nobody has, any other say but God's word. Whatever windows you have in your life, it is important that your final decision have to be the window that is God's word. When you meditate on God's word, the truth of God's word becomes your second nature. If you read the word, you chew on God's word, you think about it, you reflect on it, you meditate on it, and whatever you meditate on calls for action. If you have God's word in your life and you don't act according to the word, that becomes, a dead. It's not used for. So acting on God's word is extremely, extremely important. When you face things in your life, you got to remember that what God has promised will be fulfilled. Now, the third step is pray in spirit. Praying from your heart. A lot of times, you do things only when your heart is in it. Right? You don't do it if your heart is not in it. If your spirit is not willing to, confide into God's word and surrender to God's word, if your prayer is not surrendering to God's word, then you're not praying in spirit. Praying in spirit. A heart that is surrendered in prayer. And here is the last step. Continually give God praise. Continually give God praise. Whatever reports the doctor gives, whatever failures that might happen, do not worry about anything, is what the Bible is saying, but give Him thanks and praise. In all things. We aim for this. But when crisis hits us, there is no praise. But we think we are in relentless faith when we are able to praise in our good times. So you need to be careful what is building your faith. Because if you want to follow Jesus closely, if you want to, take a step of faith, And if you want to constantly be in connection with God, and when you meet Him face to face, and when meet Jesus face to face, and Jesus have to tell you, well done, good and faithful servant, you got to give importance to your faith.